Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the EEARSS Podcast, produced by Terrier TV here at Titusville High School. I am Frank. That is Bill. That is Cindy. What's happening, y'all? How goes it?
It goes. It's getting closer and closer. There's only 4 weeks left of the school year.
Then what happens, Bill?
Well, there's 23 days till somebody goes through a momentous occasion in their life.
Yeah, I'm totally fine. I'm fine with this, by the way.
I can see it doesn't affect you at all.
Yeah, every time we get another email from college, I'm thrilled. I'm so happy. My baby.
Oh, there's some part of you is excited
that she's leaving.
Well,
no,
you gotta be super happy. Yeah, excited as in happy
enough.
For her.
I'm proud of her.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
I am happy for her.
Yeah, you're happy for her.
I am not happy for myself.
So, yeah.
Oh, my garage.
Everyone's like, you're crazy. Isn't that what parents dream of? Don't they wait for... No.
It's different. It is different.
It's terrifying.
It is different. And it is terrifying. But, it's good, though, too. It is. Trust me, it'll be good. It'll be different, but it'll be good. Yeah.
Bill's telling you to take your medication. It's going to be all right.
Take
Take the cough syrup. It's going to be okay.
Just do her laundry without even asking.
Did she complain to you about that?
No, we have not had any conversations about that.
Is this actually a thing?
No, that's just something that my mom did that kind of made me want to go home during college, because when I would show up, she would grab my laundry and start doing it. And it was like, okay, maybe this isn't such a bad thing coming home.
I have offered to get a condo down there so I can be available for anything
to do
she
her
needs.
Laundry? Okay.
Yeah, she wasn't thrilled.
No,
she wasn't thrilled. No. Oh, Lord. You guys ready to jump into our conversation?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Okay, so today on the podcast, we are joined by the legendary Thomas Rainwater. Thomas, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Frank, how are you?
Pretty good, bub. Thank you for taking the time out of what I know is a very, very busy schedule you have between all the things you're doing to come on and chat with us, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you all for having me.
So for those who don't know, we're looking at your picture on the screen right now. It says biologist and research scientist. That is the bare minimum of the amazingness that is in your life every day. So if you can tell us a little bit about you, kind of where you grew up and maybe your career path.
Sure, yeah. So I was born in Florence, South Carolina, which is a little small town, like about, I don't know, maybe now it's 50,000 people, but it's about an hour.
It's not that small. It's got a Buc-ee's now.
That's true. Well, I think Buc-ee's is probably half the size of the town.
Probably.
And I've not been to that one yet, but I need to. I've not ventured into a Buc-ee's yet, and I hope to at some point, but I got to prepare myself.
I've only done it twice, and it was an experience.
It's overwhelming.
Well, you got to pick your time of day.
Starve myself. Yeah.
Pick your time of day.
I need to starve myself and then go in there. I heard the brisket's pretty good.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, so Florence is about an hour west of Myrtle Beach, if people know where that is. And I grew up there, in the 60s and 70s, and at a time when summertime, it was, when school was out, your shoes came off, and I was in the swamp pretty much from May 1st to the end of August, just chasing every animal that I could find with my buddies. And so I kind of grew up like many of us, and probably a lot of your guests on this podcast did, with a strong interest in wildlife and reptiles and amphibians especially, and never really outgrew that. And then I ended up going to college, and at some point had to figure out what I wanted to do with myself, and it all came back to what I enjoyed, and that was wildlife. And so I ended up going to graduate school, and was able to I'll give you the short version, just kind of, I'm extremely fortunate, but been able to kind of parlay this childhood interest in wildlife and reptiles and amphibians into a career. And so I now work for Clemson University, but I work on the coast. Clemson has a research institute on the coast of South Carolina, in Georgetown, South Carolina. So that's where my office is. I live in Charleston, or just outside of Charleston, in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, about an hour south of Georgetown. And I also work for the State Department of Natural Resources. So I have kind of two bosses. And I work at the Yawkey Wildlife Center, which is a 24,000-acre wildlife preserve on the coast of Georgetown, South Carolina. So we do a lot of alligator work there, but we do other research up and down the coast of South Carolina, everything from bobcats to terrapins to alligators and snakes, and just depends on what our collaborators are interested in. So very exciting job. And after many years of working abroad, I came home and I'm living in the coastal plain of this state and love it.
Yeah, I know your career has taken you a lot outside of the country, outside the continent. I know you spent a lot of time in Belize. You've spent time catching gharials on the other side of the world and in Asia. I know you've been a little bit all over the place. Tell us a little bit about some of those journeys.
Yeah, so it's these journey. That's just what it is, a journey. And I used to envy kids in college that I went to school with that had a known path. They were there for this reason. They were going to be pre-med or pre-law or whatever, business, and they knew just what they wanted to do. And I never had that. I never knew what I wanted to do until I was forced to make a choice. But I got so lucky, and I don't regret the twists and turns that it's taken me to get to where I am. And but yeah, so when I was in graduate school, I was trying to find my way, and I was doing a project on birds on golf courses. And I was in a program called Wildlife Toxicology, Environmental Toxicology, which is the study of the exposure and response of wildlife and sometimes humans to environmental contaminants, pollution. And I was doing a bird project on the coast of South Carolina on a golf course, looking at turfgrass pesticides and how they might affect birds that use the turfgrass for feeding and so forth. But my entire summer, there were alligators everywhere on these golf course ponds, and I was just blown away by their biology and just being able to see them. They were so common, and I thought, wow, if I ever continue in graduate school, I must do something with crocodilians. And so a lot of twists and turns, but I met a guy named Stephen Platt at Clemson, who was a Ph.D. student working in Belize on crocodiles, on Moorlet's crocodile, which Frank, I know you're familiar with. And long story short, I went down to visit him in Belize for about a week in July of '95, and we had collected some crocodile legs from a lagoon that was surrounded by sugarcane fields, and we were concerned. He was concerned that perhaps they were being exposed. The crocodiles were being exposed to pollution because at that one lagoon, the hatching rates of those eggs were lower than other parts of Belize, and so we went down there, collected the eggs, got them back to the U.S. a few months later, and analyzed them. And lo and behold, we found a variety of pesticides and other chemicals in those eggs. And that kind of gave us an impetus to continue working down there. So I ended up going back to Belize in 1997 and spent 4 years there on my Ph.D. project, and looking at both the biology of Moorlet's crocodile, but also the toxicology, the ecotoxicology of these crocodiles in the country there. And so I spent 4 years there, and man, it was just such an amazing time, both professionally and personally. I mean, I got my foot in the door with crocodilians and was able to kind of carve out a niche there, and also met my future wife there. And then years after that, kept going back to Belize over the next 10 to 15 years, doing a variety of different projects on crocs and turtles and things like that. But came back, graduated in 2003 with my PhD from Texas Tech University. And then it was time to find a job. I did a postdoc at UC Davis for a couple of years while my wife was in vet school. And then I was just trying to find any job I could. It was government, industry, universities, nonprofits, you name it, just trying to find a way to keep the ball rolling, and bounced around a little bit, but I got some contract jobs, different places, including Costa Rica, where we did some work on eye disease on crocodiles in the Charleston River that flows out of San Jose and into the Pacific Ocean there. And then I got, as you mentioned, I got hired by the San Diego Zoo to go to India for about 3 months to work on a project following, I'm not sure if your audience knows, but there was a massive die-off of Indian gharials in 2008. And of course, gharials are already critically endangered, but after that die-off of 110 animals or so, it was a major crisis. And so everyone trying to figure out what caused the die-off. And so I was part of a small team that went over to try to assess some of that work. And I got hooked up with Jeff Lang, who's a very famous crocodilian biologist, still working there. I think this is the 19th or 17th year they've been working there on gharial, and got to do a little bit of work with him, but also with some turtles and also with some fish. In a very quick 3 months, but an amazing experience. Came back. The next year I went to Belize for 2 years and 2 months, and did a countrywide survey of the critically endangered Central American river turtle. That's also known as the Hicatee. And that was a great project. and that's now led to a lot more work on that turtle in Belize. And, bounced around for a long time, and then finally came out to South Carolina and began volunteering with Phil Wilkinson in South Carolina. Phil Wilkinson is a kind of you talk about legendary. He's the real deal. He was a alligator biologist in South Carolina from the mid-'70s until his retirement in 1999. And then 20 years later, he's still doing this work. He's 92 this year. He'll be 92 in November. And he's still, of course, he's slowing down a little bit, but he's still involved in the project. I volunteered with Phil in 2010. And then Lou Gillette, who's another big name, a huge name from University of Florida, actually moved to Charleston to start a new position with the medical school there in the marine lab in Charleston. I got on with him. We got Phil and Lou together, created another great collaboration with students and field researchers, and that blossomed into a project that we're still doing today in South Carolina. Even though Phil has slowed down a little bit, and Lou passed in 2015, but the torch is being carried.
Yeah, it's I know both of those guys. Phil, the couple conversations I've had with him, man, the wealth of knowledge that man is from all those years of doing that work is. Him and Lou both. The world lost a pretty special fellow when we lost him, and it's great Phil's still after it.
Absolutely. That's one of the things about, and I don't know if it's just my experience or if it's the common denominator in this field, crocodilian biology, but just the people that you meet. I mean, just all walks of life, but just amazing. I've had really good luck working with people. I mean, from everywhere, but just really, really good people. At least in my experience, there's not a whole lot of territoriality in the crocodilian group. And when in the world, everyone works together pretty well. Sharing data, collaborating on different projects. It's been a fantastic experience, and I'm very thankful for people like Lou and for people like Phil and Woody Woodward and several others that welcomed me in to their projects and allowed me to get started. Stephen Platt, of course, is a huge one. He really is responsible for getting me into Belize and got my first foot in the door with this whole world of crocodilian biology. So it's, as much as I love the animals and the everyday excitement of the field work and the data analysis and learning new things, I have to say that the people has been just as enjoyable to me.
Yeah, there's zero doubt that the crocodilian world, which there's not many of us that are doing, out there doing the work every day. It's a pretty tight-knit group, and two, any of those guys will do anything, guys, women alike, because there's quite a few women in the world now too. They'll do anything for you at any time, give you a place to sleep, invite you down to do research with them wherever they're working at. You're right, there's no jealousy, there's nobody that's hiding things from anybody else. Everybody's open to collaborations, and you kind of wish that you'd see that across the board in a lot more things other than just crocodilians and science, honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think we all know people that are in different fields that face that type of thing, and it's not uncommon. I think what's uncommon is what we're talking about, where there's not and maybe it's just because there's not as many of us, and there's so much work to go around that there's no, a whole lot of territoriality, but for whatever reason, I love it, and it makes the job that much better. But just the people, and someone said at one time that we don't make a lot of money doing this work, but we do this work to not to get rich, but to be enriched, and I think that's a very true statement. I think that just I have an 11-year-old son that I'm trying to in a very, very kind of offhand way, relay to him how fortunate I am, and by extension he is, because he gets to go out and on these field trips and see these things that I didn't see until I was in my mid-20s, and I was lucky to see them then, and that's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it's wow, you get to see these cool things at an early age and all these incredible experiences, but on the other hand, he's going to be so used to it by the time he's in college or of that age, that it may not seem as cool to him as it did to me when I was, a young adult. So, that's up to the kids in their own paths. But I think my goal is just to expose him and other kids as much as possible to the outdoors, and they can have that experience and do with it what they want. But I think exposure to that at a young age is pretty important.
Yeah, personally was blessed to be exposed to that from about his age on, through my family, and I can tell you, it's what you're doing for him is an extreme blessing. He might not realize how much of one until maybe a few years from now, but he'll pick up on it pretty quick. It's there's no better way to be raised, without a doubt.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, coming from my background as I described, just growing up and just, you know, it's a little bit different now. I mean, we live in a little suburban neighborhood that's, you know, I'm not quite as not ready to let him just run off by himself, unless he's got, you know, a group of friends with him. Whereas when I was a kid, you know, I would disappear in the morning, and I just had to be home by dark, and that was it. And that's where I was. And it's pretty obvious. I come home covered in mud and scrapes and nicks and bites and so forth. And you know, she knew where I was, but you know, just a different time, and maybe a different place. But there's no question. I think it's important, at least for us that find value in the outdoors, is to get kids exposed as soon as possible.
I have maybe a dumb question, but you know, in Florida, I've seen alligators in Florida. I've never seen an alligator in South Carolina. I know they exist there. The weather's a lot different. Are they different there? Are they smaller?
That's a great point, Bill. I think you know, there's some data that suggests that some of the females may be a little larger, but that's probably not across the board. I know that the record size females ever captured or measured have all come from Florida. So, I mean, Florida is pretty much I think, got the market cornered on alligators, you know, large alligators, partially because the weather's warmer than it is up here, and so there's a longer growing season, and they probably eat, you know, more throughout the year than they would here. But it's a good point you make, because I think, you know, we've a lot of people don't know that alligators are in South Carolina, and I know that, you know, since COVID, South Carolina and maybe Charleston County where I live and Horry County where Myrtle Beach is, those are two of the fastest growing counties in the country since COVID, and maybe right now. And you can see it by looking out my window here, just in the neighborhood, but in the traffic. But people coming from all different, you know, areas of the country, and a lot of them don't know we have alligators here, and that can be a problem. And we work really hard, and you know, we work hand in hand with the state DNR, just like, you know, Frank and others do with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, trying to educate the public on, you know, safety around alligators, just like as you would with, you know, any other top predator in any other part of the country. And from 1901 until 2016, there was not one recorded human fatality from an alligator on record. And since 2016, we've had 6 fatalities in South Carolina. If you look at a graph of human population growth, it's a pretty stark picture that as time has gone on since probably 2010, the population in South Carolina has grown a lot, and so you have folks coming from different places. Don't know alligators are here. We're also, you know, developing more and more alligator habitat to accommodate for the people, and you know, just a matter of time before you have more interactions with people and alligators. And so, you know, I can't say this for sure, but, you know, Florida people expect to see alligators, and they know they're there. And I think when they go around ponds and lakes and golf courses, they expect to see them and a little more wary. In South Carolina, for whatever reason, it could be you know, being naive or just not knowing, but folks don't really know that alligators are here as much as they do other places. Although, all that said, the majority of the attacks on people have been on, you know, I think long-time residents. So while, you know, the naive nature of folks moving in from other places is a factor, it's not the only factor. But the bottom line is alligators here in South Carolina are just slowly being kind of pushed into a corner, and it's creating you know, some problems with negative human interactions.
Yeah, I think complacency across the board plays a big part in all of it, unfortunately, with wildlife of all kinds, not just crocodilians. But that's a lot of very interesting points you bring up there.
Right. So we work a lot with you know, with everybody. You know, it's a team effort, just like it is anywhere else, trying to educate folks, and keep people safe, and of course, and try to keep the animals safe. And there's, and one of the biggest problems, of course, on this is no secret to anybody else, is when animals are fed, right? And on the signs here, and all the DNR alligator signs you see all over the place, golf courses, ponds, stormwater ponds, and neighborhood, they all say the same thing about alligators, being here, and the big note at the bottom is, a fed gator is a dead gator. So if you feed an alligator, that alligator is going to lose its awareness of humans. It's going to come back for more food, and it's going to have to be removed and euthanized by the state. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of animals that are taken every year, because once an alligator loses its awareness of humans, then the chances of there being an attack or a otherwise negative interaction with people is greatly increased. And so, we do a lot of work with the state on that. We've done some research with some great graduate students at Clemson and other places, looking at actually capture is a method of negative conditioning or aversive conditioning to keep alligators away from people. So, in South Carolina, the majority of coastal golf courses, there's these golf course ponds, and of course alligators, are freshwater species. They can go into salt water and spend several hours if they're large adults, and feed, and they feed often, as you know, Frank, in these brackish and even sometimes marine habitats, but they have to go back to salt water to kind of equilibrate or rehydrate. And what a better place to do that on these coastal islands where you have, these marshes all around these islands that are just chock full of amazing amounts of food, with shrimp and crabs and fish and stingrays and diamondback terrapins and you name it. So they go out there to feed those marshes. Then they'll come back and they'll rehydrate or re-equilibrate in these golf course ponds, and they'll bask. And certainly if someone decides to feed one, it saves them a trip to go to the marsh. They can just sit there and get fed right there in the pond. But the problem is, once they see that, and once they're fed by someone else, they see that, and I'm kind of anthropomorphizing here, but they kind of see that human shape, and they say, okay, that means food to me, whether they hand it to me, whether I take it from them. And it just causes problems. So and there have been some studies done by some students here where they've actually gone around and looked at capture as aversive conditionings, where they would go around these golf courses and they would walk around and they would use one of those range finders that you would use when you're on a golf. I'm not a golfer, but some people use these range finders this is how far I have to hit my next ball to get it to the green or whatever. Anyway, there's an alligator on the edge of the bank, and they slowly began walking toward the alligator until the alligator slides into the water. And they use the rangefinder to determine the distance between them and the alligator. And they determine the flight distance. The flight distance is the distance the person was to the alligator before the alligator fled into the water. Let's just say it was 20 yards, 20 meters. And then they did that for several golf courses and for a couple of months. Then they came back and they spent about 3 or 4 months capturing alligators on those golf courses. And they put numbered tags in the tail. You can see from the distance with binoculars. And they let the alligators kind of, they caught them, put them through the whole experience of being captured, blindfolded, measured, weighed, tagged and released, which is for the alligator a very stressful experience. And they released them. And they came back 2 months later and went around the golf course again with binoculars, and they saw, okay, there's old number 45 over there on the shore, and they began to approach the alligator like last time with their rangefinder, and then they measured once again the flight distance, the distance the person could get close enough to the alligator before the alligator went in the water. What they found was, after the alligator had been captured, the flight distance was much, much greater. In other words, whereas before it took them 20 meters, now it takes them 60 to 70 meters. They're much further away from the gator than they were before the gator flees into the water. Therefore, we're surmising that the alligators kind of, quote unquote, learned that human shape or human beings equal a negative interaction or a unpleasant experience for them. So they tend to get into the water sooner. Now that probably won't work well in wild places like big lakes and in marshes, but in places like golf courses where most of these attacks are happening, it could be a useful technique.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No, in all your travels, you've got to have some very interesting wildlife experiences that maybe were unexpected or went above and beyond. You got any interesting stories to share with us? Share us a weird, maybe one of your most unique wildlife experiences in all your travels.
Wow, that's a tough one. There's so many.
I bet there's a bunch of them. Yeah,
I know, and I probably won't be able to remember the best ones, but thinking about crocodilians, I know we had this one lagoon in northern Belize. It was a very remote place called Gold Button Lagoon, and we would do. Steve Platt did his Ph.D. work there, and so that's how I knew about it. And it's on a big cattle ranch that you have to have access to, so no one really goes there. So it's pretty wild. And we'd been in there several times doing alligator surveys and captures and measurements and all kinds of different things, nesting surveys and everything else. And one night we were in the very back of the lagoon. It's probably a mile and a half of canoeing through this big giant place, and we were trying to capture hatchlings and measuring them. And I was in this canoe, and I reached over, and I grabbed this little hatchling, and I put it in the boat, and I was measuring it, and it was making the. You do it better than I do, Frank.
He does.
Frank needs to do the sound. He's the best. But anyway,
Oh my God.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's it. That sounds better than an actual alligator. But anyway, so it started making that vocalization, and I just, of course it did. I was holding it. I didn't think much about it, and I kept working these little babies out, reaching into the marsh and grab another one out and work it up. And I looked to my right, and I don't know how long it had been sitting there, but there was this huge crocodile head just staring at me from, maybe a foot below the side of the canoe. And I was like, whoa, and I thought, wow, it looked too big to be a female. I said, well, this is either a huge, super big female, or it is an adult male showing, protective behavior of these young. Either one of those is interesting to me, but I said, we need to get out of here. So we paddled away from that crocodile, and we paddled back further into the lagoon, and we had to come back that way to get out.
Oh no!
And so we worked for another hour. So we on our way out of that little slough, we kind of paddled by that same spot again. Just boom, the head just popped up right next to the canoe as I passed it. I mean, literally, a foot from the canoe. And then as I passed it, I heard a splash, and the canoe shook. And a little behind me, and my guy in the back of the canoe, Reuben, had narrowly escaped getting bitten, but the croc had jumped up, bit the canoe, and his teeth were right down the side of the canoe, and it kind of shook us, but he let go. And so we kept going much faster then. We got out of there. And so I was really intrigued by that. So we went to Belize City, and we bought a 12-foot by 5-foot flat bottom fiberglass boat, brought it back, put a trolling motor on it, went back out there, about a week later, straight to that spot again. And I mean, and most crocodiles, Frank, as you know, they see you coming, they disappear. This crocodile came and met us. It came right at the boat. I said, well, let's catch it. Let's see if this thing's a male or a female. Either one of them is going to be interesting. So we, most crocodiles, if you get close to them, they take off. But this croc head right next to the canoe, opened the snare up. I said, are you ready? And they said, we're ready. And I placed the snare over its head. It didn't budge. I pulled it tight, and then, all hell broke loose, and water everywhere, and it's splashing and rolling and splashing and snapping and rolling and everything. And this went on for, an hour at least, trying to get him to calm down, and, we could maybe, get him in the boat. But as this happened, I noticed that the water was in the boat, and it was about, maybe, not ankle deep, but probably halfway up my boot. I said, man, he's splashing a lot of water in this canoe. And then I looked up underneath the front of the canoe, and he'd been in the hole of the boat. He was snapping and biting, you bumping, and you don't really know. But then, so when you stood in the front of the boat, water came in. If he stood in the back, the hole was out of the water. So we got in the back of the boat, of course, and we realized there's no way we're going to get him in here without sinking the boat. So we had to tie a bunch of rope off to that. We backtracked, got to shore, tied off to a tree stump, and worked it for another hour. Worked him back into the shore. Long story short, pulled him in, and it was indeed a large. It was a male. I say large. It's only 10 feet long, but a big, thick, sassy, angry male. And we named him Ebenezer because he was so grumpy. And so there's many other Ebenezer stories to follow that. But he became notorious. And every time somebody came down and wanted to see crocodile, I knew he was going to be there. And we canoe out there, and he would kind of come after us. We have to back up and get away from him. But anyway, that was at that time one of my closest calls. We've had some other since, but that was a close call with Ebenezer.
Oh Lord, yeah, it's that's a pretty epic story.
It's a great one for Cindy because She's going out this weekend with Frank.
Terrified. I am rethinking all of my choices.
Well, just don't grab a bunch of baby alligators when you're in the canoe. You should be a lot safer.
Don't worry. I think I can avoid doing that.
Thomas,
but it's unusual. Yeah, man, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it is definitely unusual to have a. You think that was that an American or a Moralettes?
It was a Moralettes. It was a
Okay.
freshwater croc, and it was very. I mean, that's one of the few times I've ever experienced or even read about males, showing protective behavior. But maybe it was just he didn't want me there, regardless of the babies. We were in his spot, and because years after that, we'd go back in there again, and he would come toward the boat, and I would say, "Okay, what? See those two big eyes over there?" I said, "Watch them," and they would go down. And I said, "All right, back up." And we would back paddle, and you can see the lily pads between us moving between us. And so boom, he'd pop up where we had been. He was coming for us, So that was unusual behavior, but we learned quickly to stay away from Ebenezer.
Very neat. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Tell us a little bit about your journey, and man, you've that's just barely touching the precipice of what's been an incredible career. And buddy, we're just so blessed to have you on here and chat with you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. As you can tell, I can talk forever about this stuff, and really, really pleased with the podcast, and I'm really glad you're doing this. All of you, it's a great thing, and keep up the good work.
For sure, buddy. We'll get you back on here and chat with you again. We'll have to talk. We'll have to kidnap Miriam sometime and get Miriam on here when she's in Florida. Maybe get her
Miriam
in studio.
Yeah, Miriam is fantastic. You will not regret that one bit. You know that.
Yeah, we'll see if we can make that happen. But thank you, buddy. Really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll catch up with you here soon.
My pleasure. Take care, you all.
All right, see you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Awesome, dude. Literally, there's not many places he hasn't went, and very few species he hasn't caught. The guy's he's been all over the place.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Thomas is awesome, fella.
It's a great story.
Yeah, Thomas is awesome. I put him and Hannes side by side in their storytelling because you get those two guys together and they start telling stories. You can just sit there and listen to them talk all night. It's like if you can get all them and Russ together and Uncle Bill together, you have all the entertainment you want for days.
There you go.
Don't need anything else but just animal stories, and you're good to go. Yep.
That's cool. So you're still feeling good about your choices?
No, not a single one.
Oh, my garage. You'll be fine.
I'm terrified.
You'll be fine.
Well, I will tell you, when I went, because he's talking about holding the rope and pulling it, I said, Frank, I ain't touching anything, man.
Thank you.
I am staying in
I
the
want
back.
to help with taking these samples. I am qualified to do that.
But I stayed in the back.
I am not qualified to catch.
You're actually not qualified to take samples,
Yeah.
but that's a whole different thing.
But for the first one, I stayed back. And after that, I was willing. Because you need to have one under your belt. You need to see how it all works, how it all comes together.
No.
And then you'll
have a different opinion of it the next day. Even that day.
I will appreciate observing.
Yeah, you'll have a different opinion of it.
There you go.
Yep.
Well, because we had a little one, and then later on they had a big one that was coming up, and I was willing to get the rope. I was willing to be on the rope. And and I at the beginning of the day I was not willing to be on the rope.
You guys are hilarious.
So,
all right, let's wrap this one up. What do you say?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to the EEARSS podcast produced by Terrier TV here at Titusville High School. If you'd like to learn more about EEARSS, you can go to EEARSS.org. It's EEARSS with an extra E and an extra S. Or you can go to alligatorrobb.com. Robb has two B's. It's my last name. Don't go too deep into it. Just my last name. And we really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Listenership is way up. Man, just so blessed to be doing this stuff and have two awesome co-hosts and an awesome lady in the room there doing things. Even though you guys can't see her, she's there. So thank you all for tuning in to the EEARSS podcast, produced here by Terrier TV at Titusville High School. I digress, and bye-bye.